This morning, we're going to look at a topic called hard knocks and good responses. We're going to look at a Bible character today by the name of Joseph, whose life is just full of hard knocks, but it is equally full of great godly responses. Now, in order to get into this lesson, and before we do our reading, let me tell you a little bit about his story from Genesis. Let's go back to his father. His father's name is Jacob. Later on, he's called Israel. And Jacob goes seeking a wife. And he meets and falls in love with a beautiful young lady named Rachel. So after a while, he asks the father for her hand in marriage, and he says, sure, but you've got to work for it. So for 7 years, you'll work for me for nothing. At the end of the 7 years, you can marry her, and that's what they did. So 7 years after he's met her, he gets married to Rachel. Unfortunately, after the veils are removed, he finds out that he has married her sister named Leah. Now, Leah is not very attractive, apparently, and has some other issues in her life. And Jacob just doesn't love her. So he goes to the father the very morning after the wedding and says, what have you done to me? And the father says, I tell you what. After you spend a week with Leah, you can marry Rachel. Work 7 more years, and then we'll be all square. So he does that, and he works 14 years for these 2 wives, but he never loves Leah like he loves Rachel. So God has mercy on Leah and gives her a number of children, but Rachel is unable to bear even one. So finally, after many years of prayers and many years of tears, God answers Rachel's cries and gives her a son, stopping the taunting of the other women in the camp, making her feel better about who she is as a wife and a mother, a woman. And because he's been wanted for so long, well, Joseph is a little bit babied. He's loved, he's taken care of. His father even gives him a coat made out of many different kinds of material and different colors. A very expensive gift, apparently, in biblical times, and one that did draw the jealousy of the others. By the way, just for those of you who wonder if we have proof of any of these things going so far back, in Egypt, in the land of Goshen, where God's people settled during their slavery, from before that there is a pyramid there, a small one. And inside that pyramid is a statue of a non-Egyptian man of Canaanite descent. And on this statue, he is wearing a coat of many colors. Anyway, let's keep going with this. So, how does trouble start for Joseph? Well, Joseph has 2 prophetic dreams. The first is that sheaves of grain are going to come around Joseph's sheaf of grain, and it's going to stand up straight and tall, and the others will bow down before it. And he tells this dream, and his brothers just get angry. What, you're going to rule over us? Then he has a second dream. And he says, you know what? The sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down before me. Again, the question, you think you're going to be a king? You're going to reign over us like that? And the jealousy builds. So now's when the hard knocks start. When our story starts, the 11 brothers are out tending their flocks. And by the way, where's the 12th? Well, he's home with mom in the tents, not out working like the other brothers. So the brothers decide, we're going to kill him. We've had enough of him, these stupid dreams, the fact that he's babied, we have to work while he gets to stay home. And so they decide to kill him, but while they're thinking about how to do it, they throw him inside a pit. Well, they think about it over a meal and they decide to sell him. He's going to work as a slave and he's going to be blessed by God. He's going to be falsely imprisoned, then he's going to be released. And he's going to be elevated to a position of such great importance that a pyramid is going to be built in his honor. So very few people within the Old Testament are going to have the troubles that this young man has. And very few in the Old Testament are going to have as many correct responses to trouble as he has. I mean, one moment he's a prophet, the next moment he's victim or whatever of his own prophecy. One moment he's a prisoner, next he's second in command only to Pharaoh. One moment he's a teenager, hated, despised by his brothers. The next, he's a man being honored by his brothers. But there's one constant throughout this story, and this is the one constant you need in your life, and this is the one major point of this lesson I want you to grab hold of this morning and keep. And that is that God was with Joseph, and Joseph was obedient to God. No matter the circumstance, no matter the situation, no matter the timing, long or short, God was there, and Joseph was obedient. So let's start with our scripture reading, and then we'll move forward. In Genesis chapter 37, verses 3 through 8, we read, "Now Israel loved Joseph more than all of his sons, because he was the son of his old age. And so he made for him a varicolored or coat of many colors. His brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, and so they hated him. And they could not even speak to him on friendly terms. Then Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. So he said to them, 'Please listen to this dream which I've had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf rose up, and also stood erect, and behold, yours gathered around and bowed down before it.' Then the brothers said, 'Are you actually going to reign over us? Are you going to rule over us?' And so they hated him even more for his dreams and his words." So Joseph is hated, he's envied, and he's attacked here. By age 17, the Bible says that he was hated by his brothers except for Benjamin. He was being visited by these dreams, and I don't know if I should infer this lesson or not, but he told his dreams. Now, I'm sure he felt compelled by God, and if that's what happened, that's what he should do. But sometimes, in some situations, rather than trying to show what we know, we should really just kind of keep our mouth shut so that we don't make others jealous, so that we don't cause other people to sin. Regardless, he tells his brothers these dreams, and so they become envious of Joseph. Now, envy can be defined as how one feels when they want to be like someone else. When someone has something and you envision yourself having it, that's envy. That's not admiration. That's envy at that point. And so, because he has his parents' love, and because he's treated this way, his brothers envy that. They want that kind of recognition, that kind of love from the parents. So envy turns to thoughts of murder. You know, envy never lies dormant in our lives. It turns inward or it turns outward. It makes us burn and eat up inside until we become bitter, or it turns outward until we become hateful and spiteful to others. His brothers take this prized possession of his, this coat. They rip it off him. They shred it. They dip it in blood, and they send it home as proof that he's been killed by a wild animal, all in preparation of murdering him. Now think about this. When does murder become first degree? When there is an intent beforehand. These brothers have made the decision, he must die because we can't handle our envy. So the problem in life is not that we may be hated, because at some point someone is not going to like us. The problem is, how do we react when that happens? How do we resolve that? How do we work to prevent that? So Joseph, how does he respond? Because that's the important part here, right? How do we respond? So how does he? Well, first, he listened to God and not man. His ears were attuned to the words and the will of God. He was going to follow God no matter what God called him to do, even to the slave market, even to the prison. We don't ever see him complaining or griping. He's decided he's going to be obedient to God and not live in fear of what other men would do. He never verbally retaliated to his brothers or his father or to the jailer or to anyone. And he never failed to obey. He obeyed his father. He obeyed God. He obeyed Potiphar. He obeyed the jailer. He obeys Pharaoh. Joseph lives a life of obedience so that God's glory can be seen. So let's look a little bit about what it's like when our life gets down in the pits. In Genesis chapter 37, verses 18 through 25, let's read that. When they saw him from a distance, and before he came close to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Now then, come and let's kill him now and throw him into one of the pits, and we will say, 'A wild beast devoured him.' Then let's see what will become of his dreams." But Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hands and said, "Let us not take his life." Reuben further said to them, "Shed no blood. Let's just throw him in this pit that's in the wilderness, but don't lay hands on him." That idea was he might rescue him out of their hands and restore him to his father. So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers, they stripped him of his tunic, that multicolored coat that was on him, and they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty, without any water in it. And then they sat down to eat a meal. Well, I tell you what, no remorse here, right? The brothers decide to do this. Although Reuben is going to try and protect him, the brothers decide to do this, and then they just sit down to eat. They have no guilt. See, when life is in the pit, sometimes envy can turn into action. Mark 7:21-23, Jesus talks about this. He said, "It is from within, out of our heart, proceed evil thoughts, fornication, theft, murders, adulteries, deeds of coveting and wickedness, as well as deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All of these evil things proceed from within and defile the man." Envy turns into action because of a heart problem. Prior to the pit, the envy had been in their heart. They just were complaining about him. They hadn't turned it outward yet, but that bitterness inside was growing and creeping into all aspects of their life till they start thinking about an outward action. I mean, he could have been thinking this, sitting down in the bottom of that pit, is this what being good, being obedient looks like? Or how about, "Why me, Lord? I haven't done anything wrong." Ever thought that one? A lot of us do. Or if this is what it looks like now as a 17-year-old, if I continue to follow you, what will it be like later? Those are all things he could have thought about. But from his actions, we know what he did think about. That troubles are opportunity to show God's power, because he never wavers in his obedience to God, no matter the situation he's in. The answer to life's problems are not in the world. The answer to life's problems are out in the eternal with God. So following God brings the answer, not chasing after the world. So let's look for a moment. He's thrown into slavery, right? He's bought by these traders, and he's put into this home of Potiphar, captain of the guard, as a common slave. Now, he didn't walk in and they go, "Why, you're a handsome fellow. I bet you're smart. Here's the keys to my house and everything in it." No. Joseph starts as any other slave, probably doing the worst, most menial jobs, but God looks at him and responds to his crisis based on the man that Joseph was inside. Look, Genesis 39:2. The Lord was with Joseph, so he became successful. Genesis 39:21. The Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. How about Genesis 41? Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God informed you of all this, there is no one so discerning or wise as you, and you will reign over my house, and according to your command, all my people will do homage. Only in the throne itself will I be greater than you." Wow. Only in the throne. The moral to that story is, wherever you find yourself, shine. Shine and let Jesus shine through you. Shine and let the people of the world see what a true Christian is. It's not the hypocrite. It's not the person that professes Jesus on television and movies, whatever, and then in their real life they're living an exact opposite. Be who God has made you to be. Shine. No matter the adversity, shine. So God has put him in this place as a slave, and he rises up to be steward of Potiphar's home. He's the person in charge of everything. In fact, Joseph says, there is nothing in this house that I'm not in charge of except for you, which was Potiphar's wife. She files a false complaint against him, and he's put into jail. So he goes from slave to steward, and from steward to an inmate. But yet God shines through him so much in that he is made the head trustee. And the Bible says nothing happened in that prison, and the jailer didn't ask any questions because he knew Joseph was in charge. And he knew that because he saw God blessing Joseph. Then he's presented to Pharaoh as a former slave, as a current inmate, and asked to interpret a dream, which he does. And the wisdom that's involved in that interpretation is such that Pharaoh makes him prime minister, basically, of all of Egypt. See, there's some truths here. Truths that Joseph learned in his life. First is, God's purpose may be delayed, but it'll never fail. The work that God has put before you to do, that is necessary, that must be done, God will make that happen. Sometimes it's delayed. It doesn't fit our time schedule. But God's will be done. And we have to be obedient and work within the time schedule that God gives us. It might be that we work our whole life to set the stage for something to happen, only to have someone else come and make that thing happen. That's okay, because we're letting God use us. We're letting God work through us and with us. Again, 3 weeks in a row, let's talk about that conduit between us and God. God opens up that conduit when we allow it to be opened by our obedience. So, he learns that purposes may be delayed, but they are never thwarted. He learns that the law of harvest always works. Even if it's slow in coming, the law of harvest always works. And he learned that God shows honor to those who show honor to God. He learned that God will shine through the godly person. So let me ask you this. How do you react when life's hard knocks knock us down? Well, one, you can become bitter, vindictive, retaliatory. I know a person, their life is so miserable apparently, that their only happiness comes when they are making other people miserable. They live to find fault with other people. That's what happens when we turn envy inward. We can become that bitter, mean, grumpy old man. Or maybe we become resigned to a life that we think is all we deserve. We become Droopy Dog. If you remember him, us old folks remember Droopy from Saturday morning cartoons. You know, everything is bad and I'm okay. We see this a lot with people who've been abused, and they just decide that that's all they're worthy of. You're not. You are God's greatest creation. So shine. You're worth more than the hard knocks of life. Or maybe we look for a way to kill the pain of life. Well, the problem with those artificial means is that when they wear off, life is worse than it was before. And each time it gets a little worse and a little worse. Let's not fall into that trap of finding a temporary solution to a problem that we can find an eternal solution to. Or we can remember that hard knocks are going to come. I wish I could give a sermon someday and say, so there it is, do this magic formula and life will be perfect forever. I don't have that. As long as we're in life, there are going to be hard knocks. As long as we're in life, there's going to be problems. So, Jeff, what do we do with that? Well, we overcome those hard knocks by letting God get the glory for our godly responses. No matter what the circumstance, no matter what the situation, no matter what everyone around you may be doing, you shine for the glory of God. You be that light, that candle set up on a lampstand in the dark, can be seen for miles. Let God use you. Let God work through you this week.